Used to say that in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. And now we have to confront a whole nother level, and that is the information that we're getting. Is it actually supporting us, or is it something that really is an incentive to cause us to make choices? So first of all, every time we have a thought, we make a chemical. And if you have an unlimited thought, you will feel unlimited. And if you have a self-depreciating thought, you'll feel unworthy. And your brain instantaneously fires circuits that signal another part of the brain to release peptides or chemical messengers that signal hormonal centers. And when we get that arousal from the thought that we think, those thoughts sometimes weaken, the response weakens the physical body. So turns out that the emotions that are created from the thoughts are the signaling mechanisms of the body. Thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And how we think and how we feel creates our state of being. So it turns out that the thoughts based in the stress hormones, based in survival, those are the thoughts that begin to push the genetic buttons that create disease. In other words, a person wakes up in the morning, and the brain is a record of the past. The first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is they start thinking about their problems. And those problems are memories that are etched in the brain that are connected to certain people, certain objects, certain things at certain times and places. So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, the moment you think about your problems, you're thinking in the past, right? Mm-hmm. Now, every one of those problems has an emotion associated with them because we've experienced them. So the moment you remember your problems, now you feel unhappy. Now you feel anxious. Now you feel fear. So the moment we feel those emotions, it takes a thought and a feeling, a memory or an image and an emotion, a stimulus and a response, and we start conditioning the body emotionally into the past. Now, the body is so objective that it doesn't know the difference between the real-life experience that's creating that emotion and the emotion that person's fabricating by thought alone. The body's believing it's in that environmental condition. So if the environment signals the gene, and that's the truth, and the end product of an experience is in the environment is an emotion, we're signaling the same genes, and genes make proteins. And if you keep signaling the same genes, you start down-regulating the gene to make cheaper proteins, and the body begins to break down. Now, that's an unconscious process. So what goes along with that is the moment the person feels that emotion of unhappiness or whatever it is, the brain checks in with the body and says, yeah, you're feeling pretty miserable, you're suffering. And we tend to generate more thoughts equal to the feeling that we have. And so then we get caught in this loop of thinking and feeling. So if we can't think greater than how we feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, then we're thinking in the past, right? And so we call that the familiar past. And then a person gets going in the day and they start thinking, oh, I got to see this person. I got to go to that meeting. I hate doing this. And now they get in their routine. And a habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it better than the mind. So now the person running through the same routine every single day is on autopilot, and their body's now dragging them into a predictable future based on what they did in the past, and they've lost their free will to a set of programs, right? So now you have the familiar past and you have the predictable future. Those are knowns. So the only place then, reasonably, where the unknown exists is the sweet spot of the generous present moment. That is when the body and mind are free from those conditions. So along with those emotions that influence the same thoughts, people start becoming more judgmental. They start becoming more impatient. They start becoming more entitled. They start getting more afraid, more anxious, more depressed. And now the body is literally being depleted of energy because it's believing that it's living in an emergency situation. And in emergency, you tap all of the body's resources for some threat, whether it's real or imagined. And so then when you're releasing all of these chemicals, we are literally drawing the body's life force and turning it into chemistry. And so for the short term, that's cool. But the arousal that's created from those stress hormones is a rush of energy. And so then people use the problems and the conditions in their life to reaffirm their conditioning or their addiction to that emotion. And in a sense, they become addicted to the life they don't even like. And this is why change is so hard. So then when a person makes up their mind to change and they say, okay, I'm not going to say I can't, I'm not going to judge another person, I'm not going to blame, I'm not going to complain, I'm not going to make excuses, I'm not going to be a victim, I'm not going to talk trash about anybody, I'm just going to stop. Well, that works out really well for the first couple hours. Then the body's saying you're out of schedule. You normally at 8 in the morning, you're getting traffic and you're angry. Then at 11 o'clock, you check your emails and you're really judgmental and frustrated. The body's saying, oh, well, you've been doing this for the last 20 years. You're just going to stop today. So now the body, which has been conditioned emotionally to be the mind, wants to return back to its familiar territory, to the known. So the body starts influencing the mind. And it says, come on. This is a good time to judge. Come on, this is a good time to suffer. It's your ex's fault. It's the government's fault. It's it's the weather, the news, whatever it is. And if we accept, believe, and surrender to that thought without analyzing it, it slips by and it begins to program the autonomic nervous system to make those pharmacy of chemicals. And so that's when the person makes the same choice, does the same thing, creates the same experience just for that familiar feeling. Okay, I'll complain just so I can feel suffering. Then they'd rather be unhappy than step into the unknown, to step into possibility. And the hardest part about that process, first of all, is not making the same choices you did the day before. And here's the payoff. You got to stay conscious and not go unconscious. And it turns out that 95% of the time we're unconscious. So if you're going to stay conscious, then there's an element that also requires a certain amount of awareness or energy. And you got to step outside of that unconscious state. So the thoughts that they're thinking are slipping by their awareness unnoticed because they're hardwired in their brain, because they've been saying, I can't, it's too hard, my life will never change, it's someone else's fault. Those thoughts have consequences in the body. So then if a person then becomes conscious of those unconscious thoughts, becomes aware of how they speak and how they act, and they notice how they're feeling, they're no longer the program. They're the consciousness outside the program, and that's the first step to change. So when you're distracted by your environment and you got your cell phone and you're tweeting and you're Instagramming and Facebooking, whatever people do, you're distracted by that feeling. But I now know that if you take a person and you say, okay, close your eyes, sit in the silence of any external stimulation, remove the environment, sit your body down like an animal. Body is the animal. Tell it to stay. I'm going to feed you. You can check your cell phone. You can shower. You can have your coffee. But when I say, and so then here comes the challenge, right? So, and then if you say then you're not going to live in the familiar past or predictable future, you're not going to think about how long you've been meditating, what you got to do. You labor for that present moment. People think when they do this that they're doing something wrong because there's such discomfort that comes with it. But they're in the unknown. They're actually doing it right. People say, I think I'm meditating wrong. I always say, oh, no, you're doing it right. Because when you notice that your body wants to get up and check your cell phone or have a cup of coffee, and you become aware that it's on autopilot and wants to do that, and you say, come on over here, and you return it back to the present moment, you're executing a will now that's greater than the program. And if the person wants to just get angry while they're sitting there, there's an arousal, and they notice the body is amping up and revving up, and they settle it back down. Now they're telling the body it's no longer the mind, that they're the mind. Now, we've researched this, and it's tedious in the beginning at first because David is fighting Goliath. But if you keep practicing it, just like training an animal, sooner or later the body acquiesces. Sooner or later the body is trained to a new mind. And when that happens, there's a liberation of energy. The body goes from particle to wave, from matter to energy. And there goes that emotion, literally liberated from the body as energy. So the person who has the strong emotion to some circumstance in their life, and they're working on lowering the volume of that emotion, the more they lower the volume of that emotion, the more they're going to take their attention off that person and problem, and they're going to take their power back. There's going to be a break in their attention from that circumstance. And now they build their own field. And now there's energy to heal. Now there's energy to create a new life. Now there's energy for the mystical moment because they've overcome their old personality self. So I think, it's not like thinking positively. That's not the message.
Yeah.
It's overcoming until we become somebody else. And when that occurs and the person starts thinking differently and they start acting differently and they start feeling differently, they're a new personality. And they start seeing those synchronicities and serendipities. Now, crossing that river of change, the creative process now gets exciting because what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What kind of attention and intention do you want to place so that that becomes the loudest voice in your head? And if you keep practicing it, the hardware becomes a software program, and it'll say, Jay, you can do anything. Jay, you live in no time and accomplish everything. Jay, you're unlimited. You just got to hang with it. On the other side of this is greatness. Whatever you want to program in there, you get to program in there. If you sat down and say, how am I going to be with my wife, my husband, my partner? How am I going to be with my kids? How am I going to be at work with my coworkers? How am I going to be in traffic? And you close your eyes and you begin to rehearse in your mind. If you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between the real life experience and what you're imagining. So now the brain goes from a record of the past to a map to the future. Now you're installing the hardware. Keep practicing it. It becomes automatic, it becomes easier. Now it's a software program. You may just start behaving differently. And then if you said, well, listen, I'm not going to wait for my healing to feel gratitude, the whole process around, they can't be looking for it. Why would they be looking for it if they felt like it already happened? Now there's no separation. Now this is when those serendipities and coincidences and opportunities begin to show up in people's lives. So it's work. But then when they start seeing the experience in their life, all of a sudden they start believing they're more of the creator of their life and less of the victim of their life. I really think that when the survival gene is activated, preservation is the key. So we can have 10 things that happen really great in our lives. You have a family member or somebody you know that does this. They have 10 really great things happen in their one thing bad, and they focus on that bad thing. Why? Because the survival gene is activated. They want to make sure it doesn't happen again. So you put your attention on it because you don't want it to happen again. So what people do when they're aroused is they start thinking it's going to happen. And so they actually select the worst case scenario in their mind and then emotionally embrace that future before it happens. And they're conditioning their body become the mind of anxiety and fear. So in preservation and in survival, if you prepare for the worst, anything less that happens, you have a better chance of surviving. So that's the mechanism that takes place. So survival means you better take care of your body. You better be aware of your environment and make sure there's no threats. And so you got to keep your eye out there. And you better be thinking about the future based on what you learned in the past. Now, there's nothing wrong with that when the analytical facilities are in balance. But when there's an arousal, there's 3 things that create arousal: fear, hostility and anger or aggression, and pain. And that arousal drives the brain into these high states of what we call high beta. And most people need something or someone or some circumstance or some drug or some pill or some computer game to change that internal state. And the moment they notice a change in their internal state, then they pay attention to what's causing it. And they start developing a dependency on it, right? So it turns out that when we teach people how to self-regulate and change their brainwaves, we could actually see then that the incoherence, the disorderliness that's taking place in the brain, when you're over-aroused, you're overly analytical, and you're shifting your attention from one problem to one person to one thing to one place to another problem to another circumstance to your phone to your car. And each one of those elements has a neurological network in the brain. So the arousal causes these different circuits to fire out of order, and the brain is incoherent. So take 2 waves that are out of phase and mix them. When they interfere, they flatten out. There's no energy. So energy leaves the brain, right? So then when you're in arousal, you narrow your focus on the cause. If there's something rattling in the bushes and it's dark, you freeze. and you narrow your focus on it, and there's a rush of adrenaline, and your pupils dilate, and your heart starts to race, and you're ready to run, fight, or hide. I mean, that's a survival moment, but what if it's your coworker sitting right next to you or 6 feet away, and you're judging them? You're the same arousal's taking place, and what's once very adaptive becomes very maladaptive. And this is where it gets challenging. So when we teach people how to open their focus, we've done thousands and thousands of brain scans, and they get beyond their analytical processes, and they open their awareness and go from a convergent focus to a divergent focus, and they learn how to relax and regulate. Their brain waves start to slow down into alpha. And then if they do it properly and they're connecting, those different compartments of the brain that were once firing out of order start to unify. Different communities form bigger communities. The brain starts to synchronize. And then all of a sudden you start seeing different compartments of the brain all in resonance. So now when they're all in resonance and they start interfering, when those waves come together, there's more energy in the brain. So when a person dials down the mechanism, this neocortex that plugs us into three-dimensional reality, that keeps us aware of our body, that's the autobiographical self, where everything's stitched in memory in there. When we start deactivating the mechanism here, and we get beyond the memory bank of the known self, and brainwaves move into theta, we've studied this so much. When a person can let their body be in a light state of sleep and feel so safe that you can finally let go and surrender, the body is sleeping, but the mind is awake. And now the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open. And if they can regulate and stay there, something amazing happens. There's a release of energy from the body, and their brain goes into a very, very super coherent state of gamma. And gamma is super consciousness. Now, I'm not talking about a little gamma. I'm not talking about a lot of gamma. I'm not talking about a really lot of gamma. I'm talking about a supernatural amount of gamma. There's so much order and so much energy in the brain. Like if we were in an audience and we were all clapping like this, that could be alpha, right? Theta would be, and if everybody could do this, the slower we could do it, the more we can get our timing down, the more we can get coherent. But if we were doing this, it would be really hard for all of us to do that at the same time. So it takes a lot of order, a lot of awareness, a lot of energy to be able to create that kind of order. So that's how fast the brain is, and that arousal that's taking place is ecstasy. That arousal is bliss. It is the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling that people ever have. And that memory then that the person has that is so profoundly different than the feeling of success, the feeling of wealth, the feeling of orgasm or love or whatever. This is a new one, and it's a thrill. And the person notices a dramatic change in their inner state. And with that experience comes a very lucid picture, a very profound insight, a download of information. That's the moment then. The body many times rewrites the biological program. Energy is informing matter, and the autonomic nervous system is regulating. It's in high order. And remember, disease is autonomic dysregulation. Now it's getting into a very, very high frequency of order, and it's sending very coherent information to the cells and tissues, sending energy to the cells and tissues, and cells begin to emit more coherent light and information. And then there's the disease, and there it's not. And listen, I've seen it too many times. The person said, we had a guy in Cancun in our last event that was a veteran that came in a wheelchair. He had both his knees blown out. He had broken his back. He was extreme pain on the bottom of his feet. He couldn't walk. He was suicidal. He had post-traumatic stress disorder, tried everything. First walking meditation, he's out there lumbering around on 2 crutches. Next day, he's on 1 crutch. In the evening of the final meditation, I swear, he's running down the beach without his crutches, and the volunteers that usually help people with handicaps are chasing him, and he's running the other way. He hit gold. There's no pain in his feet, no limitation in his body. He got an upgrade. Now that arousal, that experience, he'll never forget. That's a new one. So I think that a lot of people, we get conditioned, like, oh wow, success, but
Yeah.
sooner or later you're gonna be like, when the novelty wears off of that.
That's
like,
not what I meant either.
But here's the cool part. The cool part is, like, when you hit pay dirt like that, when you connect to the field, when you connect to the divine, whatever you want to call it, when your consciousness merges with a greater consciousness, and that arousal creates ecstasy, bliss, oneness, whatever you want to call that, you realize that it never came from anything out there. It didn't come from the wardrobe or the facelift, the sports car, or whatever. It came from within you. And so you stop looking out there for it. And now the love affair begins. And you never want to miss a date because it's just too good. So that memory then, that is what I'm after. Because when you have those transcendental moments and you understand this, the experience of that transcendental moment lays down new circuitry in the brain. That's what experience does. And the experience produces a feeling, but it's not chemical. It's electric and it's orderly, and every cell of your body is jiggling in an order. And you're aroused and you're awakened, right? You have to admit, when that occurs, your spectrum of reality is going to broaden. Some conditioning, some illusion, some belief about a white guy with a beard keeping track of if you did something right or wrong, or you failed, or you let God down. That's not how it is. Something is removed, and you start seeing reality as it is. And all of a sudden, you start seeing the part that we edit out for survival. Now you start seeing patterns and lights and information that are transcendent of three-dimensional reality, and your spectrums. Why? Because your brain had the experience and the circuitry's there, and now your experience of the world changes. You get an upgrade to the VR set, to the virtual reality set. Oh, you got the upgrade, you got 2.0, and now it looks different. Everything looks different. Everybody looks different. The world, you're seeing beauty more. Well, and there's more holism and more connection, and sounds and words and music and sense and sight and light is all working together. That's the blessing of an awakening, right? That's where we're going. That you are actually the creator of your life. And we are going to develop concepts and ideas in one day. And every time you learn something new, you make new connections in your brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. And as you begin to leave imprints in your neurological tissue as a result of your interaction in the environment, the next thing is that you're going to have an opportunity then to apply that information, to personalize it, to demonstrate it. And a certain group of people will get their behaviors to match their intentions, to get their actions equal to their thoughts. They'll step out into the unknown and they'll try it. And when they do, they'll have a new experience. And experience then enriches the brain, reorganizing more circuits than what you understood physiologically. But the moment those neurons string into place, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And the moment you feel unlimited, the moment you feel like a patient parent, the moment you feel abundant, the moment you feel free, now you are teaching your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. So we can say knowledge is for the mind and experience is for the body. And in that moment, you're beginning to embody the truth of that philosophy, of that theory. And you're literally signaling new genes in new ways. And you are rewriting your biological program. But if you've done it once, it must mean you can do it again. And if you can repeat any experience over and over again, you are going to neurochemically condition your mind and body to begin to work as one. And when you've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it as well as the mind, now it's becoming innate in you. It's second nature. It's easy. It's familiar. It's who you are. As a matter of fact, you've practiced it so many times that you don't even have to consciously think about it because it's becoming a subconscious program. So our job is to go from philosopher to initiate to master, from knowledge to experience to wisdom, from mind to body to soul, from thinking to doing to being, to learning it with your head, practicing it with your hands, and knowing it by heart. And you and I have all the biological and neurological machinery to do this. And this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And I can tell you from my last 5 years of traveling around the world, the common people that look just like you are doing the uncommon. They're healing themselves of very serious health conditions. They're creating better opportunities and better lives for themselves, new careers. They're healing old scars and wounds that kept them connected to the past. And they're having mystical experiences that transcend language, that take them years to be able to understand and explain. And they look just like you. That most people in their life wait for that crisis or the trauma, the disease or the diagnosis, some kind of loss, betrayal in their life before they make up their mind to change. And my message has always been, why wait? Why wait for that tragedy before you decide to change who you are? That when you begin to apply these principles because you understand that they work, then it means then you'll believe in a future more than you believe in your past. And people who do the work are more in love with their future than they are with their past. And they're more interested in telling the story of possibility in their future than reliving the emotions and experiences of the past. And you know, the beauty behind all of this is that you don't have to be a monk. You don't have to be a priest. You don't have to be a rabbi. You don't have to have 40 years of meditation. You don't have to be a scholar or an academic. As a matter of fact, it's better if you're not. Because the simplicity of all of this, when people begin to apply it, is they begin to experience the fruits of their efforts. And I can tell you there isn't a person in this room that is so special to be excluded from this phenomenon. And that your thoughts literally have an effect on your body. That all thoughts carry an energy or a frequency. And if you believe that on some level that your thoughts have something to do with your body or your life, and you're thinking 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and 90% of those thoughts are the same redundant thoughts as the day before, it's going to produce the same measurable effects in your body, yes or no? And you are going to begin to emit the same energy and information in your field. And you are going to keep creating the same life. So then the same thoughts always lead to the same choices. The same choices always lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences. And the same experiences produce the same feelings and the same emotions. And those very same emotions drive your very same thoughts. And your biology, your neurocircuitry, your neurochemistry, your hormones, and even your genetic expression is equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. That's it. So if you wanted to create a new personal reality, a new life, you would have to change your personality, yes or no? That means then you would have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it, yes? You would have to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them, true? Even what you say and how you talk. And you would have to look at those emotions that keep you connected to your past, because emotions are the end product of past experiences. And you would have to decide, do these emotions belong in my future? That means if you want to be wealthy, you can't take lack or unworthiness. A wealthy person would never feel that way. So most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. You're literally going to have to become someone else. So the principle in neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together So if you keep thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, demonstrating the same behaviors, create the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, all for the familiar feeling called you, then wouldn't you agree then, if you've done that over and over again, firing and wiring, emotionally conditioning and signaling the body in the same way into the past? If you did that, I don't know, let's be conservative, 25 years, would you agree then you would begin to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature? Yes? And that finite signature is called your identity. And it's a fact that by the time we're 35 years old, we become memorized to a set of automatic programs, behaviors, beliefs, perceptions, emotional reactions that function subconsciously. So then the first process of change then would become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, yes or no? Yes. And because of the size of the frontal lobe, which is 40% of your entire brain, the crowning achievement of the human being, the fact that you can observe how you're thinking, notice how you're acting, and pay attention to how you're feeling, the moment you can observe that, it means you're no longer the program, yes or no? You're the consciousness observing the program, and you're beginning to objectify your subjective self. You're no longer your biology. You're the consciousness observing who you are, yes or no? Yes. So then the word meditation then literally means to become familiar with. That's what it means. That's the symbol. So then if you begin to become familiar with how you've been thinking, and you're so conscious of those unconscious thoughts like, I can't, what's wrong with me, it's too hard, I'll never change, I'll never make it, I'm too tired, nobody loves me. Those are the thoughts that are slipping by your analytical mind unchecked and beginning to program your autonomic nervous system into the same destiny. The moment you become aware of what comes out of your mouth and how you act, whether you blame or complain or make excuses for yourself or judge other people, the moment you become aware of that, if you're so familiar with that program, would you agree the more conscious you are of that unconscious habit, the less likely you're to go unconscious? Yes or no? Yes. And it would take an act of will to stay present and aware. Yes or no? And if you're becoming so familiar with the emotions that you've been living by every day for the last 20 years, that you didn't even know that you were guilty because it just felt like you. And it was so comfortable suffering that you felt really good to feel bad. But you didn't know that because that's just how you've been feeling. Yes or no? Yeah. And then all of a sudden you become conscious. Oh my God, what have I been doing? The moment you become aware of that, then, it means then you're less likely to lower your energy and your emotional state during your day because you would become conscious of it. Yes or no? And what if, then, you decided, what thoughts do I want to put my attention behind? Let me review them, how a great person would think. What would be the internal dialogue they would have? And you began to fire and wire those circuits in your brain. And if you did that a few times, you would begin to install some circuits in your brain, yes or no? And if you kept thinking that way, firing and wiring, the hardware would become a software program, yes or no? And who knows? In your waking day, you may start thinking like a great person. Because the circuits are there, yes or no? Yes. And if you said, I'm going to master this day, one lifetime, how would an unlimited person live today? And you began to rehearse in your mind who you were going to be before you opened your eyes. The act of rehearsing mentally, when you're truly present, your brain does not know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. And all of a sudden, you begin to install more circuits in your brain, priming it. All of a sudden, installing those circuits so that you have the hardware in place to act like that person, yes or no? Come on. And if you've done that enough times, would you all of a sudden start acting like that person in your waking day? Because you've primed your brain, instead of to be a record of the past, that now it's becoming a map to the future. Yes or no? And then what if you said, now this is, to me, greatness. Can I teach my body emotionally what my future is going to feel like before it's made manifest? Now, this is the challenge, because we've studied this so much. Most people wait for their wealth to feel abundant and worthy. They wait for their success to feel empowerment. They wait for the healing to feel gratitude and wholeness. They wait for their new relationship to feel love. Or they wait for the mystical moment to occur to feel awe. That means then we're victims to our environment. We're waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. And the moment we feel better inside of us, we pay attention to whoever or whatever caused it. And that event, in and of itself, is called a memory. That's Newtonian physics, cause and effect. In other words, if people are in lack, or they're empty, or they're suffering, they're waiting for some external exogenous condition to change how they feel. And what happens if it doesn't happen? They spend the rest of their life fighting for it, trying to controlling it, manipulating it, trying to make it happen, because they're separate from possibility. But don't you know that the moment you start feeling wholeness, your healing begins? The moment you start feeling worthy and abundant, you're walking towards your future, called wealth. The moment you're empowered by a vision, and every single day you're living in that energy, you are going to tune into a new future. And synchronicities and serendipities are going to begin to happen all around you. The moment you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life, you're going to magnetize an equal. And the moment you're in awe of knowledge and information, you're going to have a mystical experience. And that's causing an effect. And so then, if science tells us that the environment signals the gene, are you with me? Yes. And all genes make proteins. And proteins are responsible for the structure and the function of your body. And genes are like Christmas tree lights. They turn on and off all the time, and we've measured this. Would you agree then that if an experience in your environment produces an emotion, and science tells us it's the environment that signals the gene, when you begin to experience the emotion ahead of the environmental experience, you're signaling the gene to begin to make new proteins to prepare the body for that future experience. Are you with me? Yeah. Now you're in alignment biologically with the destiny, neurologically, chemically, hormonally. And all of a sudden now, this is the beauty. If you're able to then maintain that state of mind and body, where there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the experience has already occurred because you're doing the work, then the magic starts to happen in your life, and it comes out of nowhere. Those coincidences, those opportunities that begin to unfold are unfolding because you're no longer living in the known. You're living in the unknown. Are you with me still? And I'm telling you, you're more alive and at your best when you're in the unknown than when you're in the known. Are you still with me? Yes. So then, if the brain is a record of the past, it's an artifact of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment. Would you agree then, if you're not being defined by a vision of the future every single day, you're left with the old circuits of the past? Yes or no? And if you are living by the memories of the past and you're not installing any circuits into the future, then you're going to be predictable in your life. Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. And if feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences, and you remember experiences better because you remember how they feel, The moment you wake up in the morning and you say, let me see, let me think about my problems. Oh, now I'm starting to feel a little bit more like myself. Wait, let me grab my cell phone and let me check my WhatsApp and my texts and my emails and my Facebook. And Jennifer's eating carbohydrates. Did you see that? Oh, my God. And my high school boyfriend is looking for me. And the moment you begin to connect to your network of your personal reality, the moment you start turning on those circuits in your brain and you come back to your senses and you get connected to those emotions that have defined you, based on memories, and those emotions are driving your thoughts. And you can't think greater than how you feel, you're thinking in the past. Yes or no? Yes. And you'll keep creating more of the same life. So then, think about this. You wake up in the morning, your brain, for the most part, is in the past. Yes or no? Yes. Come on, poke the person next to you over there. And would you agree then, if you connect to a familiar feeling or an emotion, and those emotions are driving your thoughts, and those thoughts are creating the same emotions, and those same emotions are driving your same thoughts, and those same thoughts are creating the same emotions, that you're conditioning your body into the past? Yes or no? Yes. And your body is the unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between an experience in your life that's creating an emotion and an emotion that you're creating by thought alone. To the body, it's believing and it's living in the same past experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Yes or no? Yes. And the body is beginning to continuously get the same information, and it's believing it's in the same environmental condition, which means you're signaling the same gene in the same way. Yes or no? And now you're headed for a genetic destiny. Yes or no? And you've done nothing wrong. You're just taking too long. Because those emotions then will define you. And then someone will say to you, "What's up? Why are you so angry? Why are you so bitter? Why are you so afraid? Why are you so in so much pain? Why are you suffering so bad?" And you say, "I'm so glad you asked." And then you tell a narrative, the story of your past, firing and wiring the same circuits in your brain, working yourself up into an emotional froth to keep signaling the body into the past, reaffirming your personality based on a feeling. And the latest research on memory says that 50% of what you're talking about isn't even the truth. That you make stuff up. You embellish it. That memory is creative. And what that really means after all these years of studying this, when you ask a person that, it means that they had an event or a series of events in their life that branded them emotionally. And when they tell that narrative, what they're really saying is, "I haven't been able to change since that event. I've been altered from that experience." Yes or no? Yes. And they find people in their life that are the same emotion, the same energy, and they use each other to reaffirm their addiction to that emotion. And they get agreement for it. And they say, "I can suffer more than you can." No, I can suffer more than you do. Are you with me still? So then, the body becomes conditioned into the past, which means for the most part, most people's biologies are anchored in the past. And if how you think and how you feel creates your state of being, and you're thinking the same thoughts that are creating the same feelings and the same emotions, and those emotions are influencing your thoughts, would you agree then you're signaling that same gene over and over again? And if genes are responsible for the structure and the function of the body, and you keep selecting and instructing the same gene, you're going to wear that gene out. Yes or no? Yes. Just like gears in your car. Taking a fax of a fax of a fax of a fax, or a copy of a copy of a copy, sooner or later it's going to lose its detail. Yes or no? And that's exactly what happens to the body. The body begins to break down because those proteins are responsible for your physiology, for your structure. So then if immune cells make immune proteins, and you're living in fear every single day, you're living in anger, in resentment, in impatience every single day, then you're signaling the same gene in the same way, yes or no? Yes. And if you keep doing that for a period of time, sooner or later you're going to program that gene, and all of a sudden the body's going to get unhealthy, yes or no? Yes. And look, you know, people say, well, I did my meditation 3 days and nothing happened. But I tell them, how long did it take you to create that condition? Tell me. So then if meditation means to become familiar with, you got to become more familiar with the thoughts, behaviors, and emotions of your future than familiar with the thoughts and behaviors, emotions of your past. Yes or no? Yes. So then if you keep firing and wiring the same circuits in your brain, installing the circuits, the hardware becomes a software program, and it gets easier to think in unlimited ways. It gets easier to act like a wealthy person. It becomes easier then to cultivate the emotions of your future instead of the emotions of your past. And our students, people in this work, some of them have had horrific pasts. They've been abused, they've been traumatized, they have had very difficult conditions, and they stopped telling the story of their past. They started telling the story of their future, and they started believing more in that in their past. And when people come up to me and they vomit all over me about their past, I don't have a problem with that. I know that it's natural to do that. But I always ask them, listen to me, if you can't overcome that past in some way and you're feeling those emotions, you'll only talk about your past when you're feeling those emotions, because those emotions bring you back to your past. Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. But if you're having a great life, you never talk about your past anymore because you're no longer emotionally bound to it. Yes or no? Yes. So then the moment you start feeling emotional, hint, you're back in your past. Yes or no? So now reason this with me. Great experiments have been done on the fact that we emit light and information, that you are an electromagnetic being, that you are emitting energy and information. And all that energy is carrying a message. And if you're living every single day in the same energy, then your life should not change in any way. Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. Come on, stay with me. Did the gene thing throw you off? So think about this. When you are living in fear, when you're living in anger, when you're living in resentment, you're living in survival because those emotions signal the stress response, yes or no? Yes. And when you turn on that stress response, you are going to draw from this invisible field of vital energy around your body, that light and that information, and you're going to turn it into chemistry. And you're going to diminish your very field around your body. Yes or no? Yes. So then, when you perceive a threat, when you see a circumstance in your environment that is unpredictable or unknown, the moment you perceive that, you activate that fight or flight nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, and you're going to mobilize enormous amounts of energy to prepare yourself for that danger in your outer world. Yes or no? Yes. And you can do that on the short term because that's survival. But when the event is over, the body rests, parasympathetic nervous system turns back on, long-term building projects start to occur, you're starting to heal. And all organisms can tolerate short-term stress. But what if it's not a predator? What if it's your coworker? What if it's your boss? What if it's your sister-in-law? Because of some past experience, you're perceiving that condition in your environment based on your past, and you're turning on the same stress response as if you were being chased by a predator. Yes or no? And you keep going back into that environmental condition, and you knee-jerk in the same way, and you keep producing those same chemicals over and over again, same chemicals over and over again. The stress chemicals downregulate genes to create disease. It's a fact. Are you with me still? Yes. So then, if you're doing that for an extended period of time, and all of a sudden now you become addicted to the very rush of chemistry that gives the brain and body a rush of energy, Would you agree then, if you keep doing that over and over again like an addict, you need to feel angry. You need to feel lack. You need to feel unworthy because it reaffirms the emotional state. Are you still with me? Now, it gets a little bit weird here because we got a big frontal lobe. And you can just call up a memory from the past. At the moment you call up the memory from the past, your body's in the past physiologically and emotionally. And you can begin to worry about the worst thing that could happen in your life. Out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, you're going to select the worst case scenario. And you're going to begin to get ready for that event. And you are going to begin to change your emotional state in preparation for the worst thing that could happen. Because in survival, if you prepare for the worst, you have better chances of surviving. Are you with me still? Now, I would call that a limited imagination. Yes or no? But in survival, though, when you're in stress, then, if you prepare for the worst and it doesn't happen and something less happens, you have a better chance of living. And this is the primitive survival gene that begins to become activated. And people spend their entire life doing this. And all they're doing is marrying a clear intention, a vision of their future, which is a very limited point of view, and embracing it with a familiar emotion of the past. And they're expecting their past to be their future. And if how you think and how you feel creates your state of being, that person's past is going to be their future. Are you with me still? Yes. So then, reason this with me. If you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and the hormones of stress give the brain and body a rush of energy, and people become conditioned or addicted like junkies to those emotions, then would you agree with me then? If you can turn on that stress response just by thought alone, that you can become addicted to your own thoughts. Yes or no? Yes. And if the hormones of stress are highly addictive and you're using your boss or your coworker or your sister-in-law or your finances to reaffirm your addiction to that emotion, is it possible you become addicted to the life you don't even like? Yes or no? And this is why change is so hard. And if you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and the hormones of stress downregulate genes to create disease, then your thoughts could make you sick. Yes or no? So, okay, let's go out on a limb here. If your thoughts could make you sick, is it possible that your thoughts could make you well? Yes. Okay. So then that means then that you would have to start a process of no longer drawing from this invisible field of vital energy and turning it into chemistry and diminishing your own light field. When you do that over time in chronic stress and you keep drawing from this invisible field of energy and turning it into chemistry, you have no light field. Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. So now you're more matter and less energy, more particle and less wave. And in fact, the hormones of stress cause you to narrow your focus on objects and things and people because that's where the danger is. And when the hormones of stress kick in and your brain waves go into high beta and you're aroused, you're going to pay attention to your outer world and you're no longer going to want to believe in your inner world of possibility. Are you with me still? And if the survival gene is switched on, then you won't want to go in, close your eyes and create because it's not a time to create. It's not a time to focus on the unknown. It's a time to prepare yourself for what could be lurking behind those corners. And it's not a time to learn. It's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to be vulnerable. It's not a time to sit still. It's a time to run, to fight, or to hide. And people spend the majority of their life living by these hormones. And those hormones cause us to become materialists, using our senses to define reality. And if you can't see it, you can't hear it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't feel it, it doesn't exist. And all of a sudden, people all of a sudden give up possibility. And now, when they're more matter than energy, they will try to force outcomes, control outcomes, predict outcomes, fight for outcomes, because they are matter trying to change matter. Are you with me still? And as people begin to try to control and predict all the different things in their life when they're aroused by these chemicals. Each person, each object, each thing, each place, each experience has a neurological network in their brain because they've experienced them already. Yes or no? And as they shift their attention from one person to one problem or one thing, they start activating these different circuits over and over again. And all of a sudden, if you measure that in the brain gets highly incoherent. It's a house divided against itself. And when your brain is incoherent, you're incoherent. And when your brain isn't working right, you're not working right. And at the exact same time, when this vital energy is being drawn and turned into chemistry, the heart, the center of oneness, the center of wholeness, your first step to divinity right here, the bridge, your connection to the unified field, it loses its energy, and all of a sudden it starts to beat very incoherently. And the emotions of resentment and impatience and hatred and violence cause the heart all of a sudden to no longer be in balance. And all of a sudden we no longer trust our heart. What we want to do is protect ourselves from everyone and everything in our life, and we no longer trust. And if you can't trust in the unknown, then it doesn't exist. And people understand when they're living by the hormones of stress unconsciously to run from the unknown. Because the unknown you can't predict, and it's being in that state of the unknown and not being able to predict your future that actually creates the stress response. So nobody takes a chance and possibility, and everybody's waiting for everybody to do it. Are you with me still? And when you narrow your focus on matter and on objects and things and people, you're focusing on the particle in quantum physics, and you're eliminating the wave of possibility. And where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And if all of your attention is on matter, then energy doesn't exist from you, and you will feel separate from the field. You will live in lack. And you will say, I feel empty, and I need that thing to make me feel better. And once I get that thing, I'm going to experience the emotion of it, and when I get it, then it's going to make me feel better. But when the novelty wears off, here comes the emptiness again. So then you say, I'm in lack again. I need one of those. So then you got to go to work, and you got to drag your body through space. And when you drag your body through space, you experience time. So then you got to go back and forth to work to make the money to pay for the thing that's going to fulfill some lack. But it never does. Are you with me still? And people then, all of a sudden, after 30 years, they have their car, they have their house, they have their relationship, and they're too exhausted to enjoy it. Are you with me still? Yes. And that's called normal. But would you agree with me then? If you're waking up in the morning, come on, stay with me. If you're waking up in the morning and you're not being defined by some vision of the future, and your biology is in your past, and you get up and start your day, when you see the same people and you go to the same places and you do the exact same thing and you see the same object in your life, it's your environment that's influencing how you think and feel. Yes or no? And you will be thinking and feeling in the past because your biology is in the past. Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. So if you see the same people and you go to the same places and you do the exact same thing at the exact same time, you would have to agree with me then that your personality is no longer creating your personality. Your personal reality is creating your personality. Your environment is controlling how you think and feel. Yes or no? Yes. And as long as you're reacting equal to your environment, you should create more of the same environment. Come on. Yes. And there should be a nice biological dance, a perfect match between your neurocircuitry, your chemistry, your genes, your hormones, with what's going on in your life. There's a tango going on between your inner world and your outer world. Yes or no? Yes. So then, your environment is actually controlling you. You're a victim to the circumstances in your life. And you see the person, you unconsciously react. You go to the certain place and you think about in the past how it was. And so then, If how you think and how you feel creates your state of being, and you keep thinking the same thought that keeps producing the same emotion, that same emotion is influencing how you're thinking. You're hardwiring your brain and conditioning your body emotionally into the past, yes? And if you do that enough times, thinking and feeling in the same way, the body becomes the mind of that emotion. Now the servant has become the master, and the body's running the show. Yes or no? And so then if the body then has become the mind of that emotion, then to change then would be becoming greater than your body. Yes or no? And if your environment has that much influence on how you're thinking and feeling, then to change then is to be greater than your environment. Yes or no? And if you're waking up every single morning, coming back to your senses, looking at the person next to you saying, oh my God, who is that? How did I get here? Jeez. Wait, let me think of all my problems. Okay, I'm starting to feel like myself. Let me get my cell phone. Let me check. Okay, now I'm feeling like myself. And then you get up and you go through the same routine behaviors in your habitat. You have the vision of the toilet, and the next thing you know, you're in front of the toilet. Then while you're on the toilet, you have the vision of the coffee maker, and there you are, you're in front of the coffee maker. And then while you're drinking your coffee, you have the vision of the shower, and there you are in the shower. And while you're in the shower, you get super creative about the clothes you're going to wear, and next thing you know, you're dressed. And your body is always following your mind, but it's following it to the known. Are you with me still? And let's just say you drive to work the same way and see the same people and go to the same grocery store and buy the same food and watch the same television shows. And then you get in front of the mirror at night and you put your lotions and potions and creams on and floss the same way and brush your teeth. And you go to bed and you wake up in the morning and you're doing the same exact thing. Yes or no? Yes. Would you agree then we can take your past and lift it up and set it on your future? Yes or no? Now, that's karma. That's it. That's karma right there. And so then if you've done that enough times, a habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through frequent repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times, your body now knows how to do it better than your mind. Are you with me still? So if you wake up in the morning and you're doing that, would you agree then your body's on autopilot? And it's dragging you into a predictable future based on what you did in the past. And you're unconscious. Yes or no? And I assert that when you are not in the present moment, you're running a program. So don't take anything personally from somebody, because they're just running a program as well. Are you with me still? So then, think about this. Would you agree then that if you are going to heal your body by thought alone, to create some new experience in your environment by thought alone, to create some new future that's no longer your past by thought alone, then you would have to become thought alone? Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. So then would you agree then if your environment is so strong in conditioning you into the past, would you agree then maybe it'd be a good idea to sit down at the beginning of your day, close your eyes, and disconnect from your external environment? Yes or no? So then if you're seeing less things in your external environment because you've closed your eyes, all of a sudden now, your environment isn't going to control how you think and feel. Yes or no? And what if you were to play soft music in the background or put earplugs in and diminish more sensory information coming in from the environment? Would you agree you'd start putting more attention on your inner world instead of on your outer world? And what if you said to your body, hey, sit right here and stay right here. Don't you get up yet until I tell you it's time to get up. And your body is going to buck and kick like an unbridled stallion. I'm busy. I got a lot to do. I got emails to check. I got meetings to go to. Because you programmed it that way, yes or no? Yes. And every time you say to the body, stay, are you telling it it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind? Yes or no? Yes. And now the will is becoming greater than the program. Yes or no? And all of a sudden, if you became conscious that you were angry or emotional or suffering, and you became aware that emotion was keeping you into the past and driving your brain into high beta, and you became aware of it. And then you settled your body back down into the present moment, and you kept taking it out of the past. Sooner or later, the animal is going to surrender. Yes or no? Yes. And when it does, you are going to liberate energy. You are going to go from particle to wave, from matter to energy. And when that happens now, all of a sudden, you start feeling a little bit more joy, and energy starts to move right there. Are you with me still? Yes. And if you are uncompromising to the eternal present moment, the generous present moment, and you keep coming back to the present moment, and you understand where you place your attention is where you place your energy, and you're no longer thinking about the people you have to see and the places you have to go and your cell phone and your computer and your emails and the news, and you keep returning your attention back to the present moment, would you agree then you're disinvesting your energy out of the known future and you're making room for the unknown in your life? Yes or no? So then, in meditation then, if you are literally going to make some type of change and affect your outer world, you're going to have to put most of your attention on your inner world, and you're going to have to become greater than the conditions in your environment and disconnect from your environment. You're going to have to sit your body down and overcome your body, and you're going to have to transcend time. Are you with me still? So then when you're living by the hormones of stress and you're in a threatening situation and the survival gene is turned on, then you're going to spend the most of your time thinking about your environment. Yes or no? And what is your environment made of? People, pets, things, objects, places, time. Yes or no? And when you're living by the hormones of stress and that survival gene is conditioned and turned on, would you agree that you better pay attention to your body if you're being chased by Mr. Big? Yes or no? So most people start to put all of their attention on their body, and they start believing that they're their body. Are you with me still? And if you're living by the hormones of stress and you're trying to predict the future based on the past, then you would have to agree with me then when you're in the present moment, you can't be in stress. Because there is no future and there is no past. There's only the present moment. Yes or no? So then meditation is about that. And what we've measured over and over again when we've done this is I now know without a doubt that you are at your absolute best when you get beyond yourself. Period. And I can tell you right now, you can't tell me you're too old. You can't tell me you're too out of shape. You can't tell me about your past. You can't tell me about your disease. I have seen transformation and shifts in people's bodies independent of how old they are, how out of shape, how in shape, their wealth, their social status. I've seen it happen on all cultures, all ages, all kinds of people. Are you with me still? So then, if you start taking your attention off your body, then would you agree that you would become nobody? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes. And if you took your attention off all the people in your life that you have to take care of and make sure everything's in place, and all those people have created your identity, that the moment you take your attention off all those people in your life, you become no one. Yes or no? Come on. And if you're not thinking about the things you own and all the objects, your computer, your cell phone, then all of a sudden you're in nothing. Yes or no? Yes. And if you take your attention off the place you have to go or the place you're sitting and you get so lost in your inner world that there's no longer an outer world, then you're in nowhere. Yes or no? And if you are not thinking about the predictable future or the familiar past, and you are in the generous present moment, then you are in no time. Are you with me still? And that means then you're no longer your face. You're no longer your pain. You're no longer your job. You're no longer your gender. You're no longer your diet. You're no longer your profession. You're no longer a mother. You're no longer a father. You're no longer a kid. You're no longer your culture, your skin color. You're no longer your name. You are nobody. No one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. And in that moment, you are walking into the door to the quantum field. You are passing through the eye of the needle. Are you with me still? And now here's what happens when this occurs, and we've measured this enough times. When you're thinking about all those people and things and problems and conditions in your life, and your brain is aroused because of the hormones of stress, and you're in survival, and you're activating all those circuits in your brain is firing very incoherently, and your heart is out of rhythm, and you're drawing from this field and turning it into chemistry, and you're more matter and less energy, that there comes a moment where all of a sudden the person has to settle down and there's chaos going on within them. They're disconnecting from their environment, and it's the unknown. And they have to work in trusting in the unknown more than the known. And as they do this properly, and they get beyond themselves, and they're no longer thinking about those people, they're no longer thinking about their pain or their body, they're no longer putting their attention on objects or things or places and time. If they're no longer activating these circuits in the brain because they're no longer thinking about them, guess what happens? Their brain waves begin to change from beta brain waves, high beta aroused state, into alpha. And in alpha, all of a sudden, the inner world starts becoming more real than the outer world. The brain starts to imagine. And when you're out of the way, and you're no longer thinking and feeling in the same way, and you're changing your brain waves, as you change your brain waves, you're falling right into the autonomic nervous system. And as your brain waves slow down, all of a sudden you're connecting to that autonomic nervous system that wants to just do one thing: create order and balance in your body. And it says, she's gone. She's out. And it steps in right into the neocortex. And when it steps right into the executive brain, all of a sudden it starts taking those different compartments of the brain that were no longer working together and starts to synchronize them. And all of a sudden you see the front of the brain talking to the back of the brain. We've seen this so many times. You see the right side of the brain talking to the left side of the brain. And all of a sudden you see the brain starting to move into a more holistic state. And what sinks in the brain links in the brain. And all of a sudden, the person starts to feel connected to something greater. Are you with me still? And the moment that that happens, we can predict it now. The neuroscientists that come and study our work, we say, she's going to pop. What do you mean? Just watch. She's going to pop. And all of a sudden, the brain starts working together. And as they're no longer thinking and they're no longer putting their attention on objects and matter and people and things, and they're all of a sudden putting their attention within them, and that brain starts functioning in a holistic way, it starts to synchronize, and those brain waves become highly coherent. And all of a sudden, when that happens, that energy moves right into the heart. And at that time, we've measured this. All of a sudden, that person starts to feel whole. When that brain, that right hemisphere and that left hemisphere come together and it starts to synchronize, the union of polarities, the union of duality, the union of separation or opposites is called wholeness, it's called love. And the moment those two hemispheres come together, that energy breaks right into the heart, and the person's heart goes into super coherence. And the field around their body can be up to 8 feet wide, 9 meters wide. Now they're more energy than matter, more wave than particle, and they feel connected to something greater, and they would never try to control an outcome. They would never try to force an outcome. They would never try to predict an outcome, because they understand that all they have to do is put their attention on possibility, and their body's going to follow their mind to the unknown. And it's so amazing when this happens. You can see the person's heart go into coherence. You can see their brain go into coherence. And you can walk around while they're in the meditation. You can look at them like this, and there are tears of joy rolling down their face. They are being baptized by the divine. They are connected to the unified field. And the unified field is that quantum field that governs all the laws of nature. And when that occurs, they feel so whole and so in love with life and so in love with themselves, it's impossible to want. How can you want when you feel whole? You feel like you have everything.
And that's the moment the magic happens over and over again. And there is a biological, neurological, genetic upgrade in that person when they connect to the unified field. And when you connect to the unified field, you will go from somebody to nobody to everybody. From someone to no one to everyone. From something to nothing to everything. From somewhere to nowhere to everywhere. And from sometime to no time to every time. Isn't that the quantum field? And when that occurs, you will feel so connected and so whole. When you're in that state, you no longer experience separation. You no longer are saying, I need that. You're saying, I already have it. I don't really need anything. And when you're in that state, guess what happens? You go from selfish, driven by the hormones of stress, to selfless. And all of a sudden, that heart of yours begins to open, and the innate capacity in you to give, to take care of, to nurture, to serve is who we really are. And all of a sudden, you create a community of people that are in love with each other, and they understand that the way that we survive is in cooperation, no longer in separation. Are you with me still? So imagine this. Imagine. I always say that the thought that you think is the electrical charge in the quantum field. And how you feel is the magnetic charge in the quantum field. And how you think and how you feel is broadcasting information into the field. Are you with me still? Come on. So then if you have drawn from your visible field of energy and turning it into chemistry, and you're more matter and less energy, you're separate from that field, it's going to take a long time for your dreams to occur. Yes or no? Because we live in a realm where there's infinite space. Look at, space goes on forever, yes? And the way we experience time as matter is we drag our body through space. Let's go get that. And if we drag our body through space, it's going to take time. So it's going to take time for you to get your dreams because you're matter trying to change matter. Yes or no? But if you're in a realm, and Einstein said, I didn't say this, Einstein said it, the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. He didn't say the particle is the sole governing agency of the particle. Matter doesn't affect matter. Energy affects matter. Are you with me still? So then if you were in the field, then you should be able to connect to that energy and begin to exert greater effects on matter. Yes or no? But doesn't that mean you can't take your body there, right? Can't take your face, can't take your weight, can't take your vegetarian diet, can't take any of it. You got to leave that all there. You got to go as consciousness. You got to go as an awareness. Yes or no? Now, we've measured this enough times. Imagine 750 people in a room, in an advanced workshop. They have overcome themselves. The first day is all about overcoming themselves. And we know that the energy in the room usually goes up slightly, because we measure it, or it goes down slightly, or it goes up a little bit. Because as people begin to break their emotional bonds with everyone and everything in their life, they're drawing energy from the field, and they're building their own vital field of energy. Yes or no? So then we should see the energy in the room drop. And we do, because, hey, if you're using your best friend to reaffirm your addiction to suffering, hello, am I getting too close? And then you're breaking that addiction, then you're gonna no longer be bound to that person energetically, and you're going to start calling energy to build your own field. Because all of that suffering, all of those emotions, all that guilt, all that resentment is your creative energy that's tied up. Are you with me still? So there's no energy to create with. So then as you're drawing from this invisible field of energy, and you're breaking the bonds with your past, present reality, the energy of the room will drop. And we've measured it. But when people start to overcome themselves, all of a sudden they start to contribute to the field of energy in the room. Now all of a sudden their heart starts to become more coherent. How do we know that? We measured it. And I don't care how old you are. I don't care about your past. I don't care about your skin color, your gender. I don't care about any of that. When people finally open up this center and we teach them how to do it, and I just was in a long meeting with the Heart Math Institute that we partner with, and he keeps telling me, your results are supernatural. And I keep telling him, our students are supernatural. Imagine 750 people in the room, they're overcoming themselves, and they start activating this center, their center of oneness, their center of wholeness, their connection to the unified field. And as the heart starts getting coherent and it starts creating elevated emotions like gratitude, people are feeling the emotions of their future that begin to create holism and oneness. And not just doing it for a few seconds. We want our students to sustain it, to make it a skill, to regulate internal states independent of the conditions in their external environment. And our students can hold it for 45 minutes. Imagine, the heart is in super coherence. When that heart starts to beat in rhythm and they're sustaining it, all of a sudden that field starts to expand. That energy starts to become very coherent, like dropping a pebble in water, after pebble, and it's creating this wave. And they're sitting there, and the rest of the room is sending the thought on that energy for the greatest good for those people sitting in the front of the room. You tell me then how majority of those people, how their hearts all go into coherence at the exact same time, on the exact same day, in the exact same meditation. You see, we are bound by that field of love and energy. Are you with me still? And that's what creates community. So then, when you start to open your heart, every single person that you are connected to, you begin to have an effect on, because you are entangled in energy. Are you with me still? So then, when that person starts to go into heart coherence, and they start producing a measurable coherent field, and their brain is in coherence, there's research that shows that the heart and the brain are communicating not just by nerve cells and nerve tissue, that they're interfering and creating a coherent electromagnetic signature. And the heart begins to act like an amplifier, and it begins to affect the brain, becoming more coherent. The brain sends a more coherent message to the heart, and all of a sudden the person is in a whole different state of being. And that state of being is what I call the natural state of being. That's who we really are when we're not separate, when we're not warring, when we're not deceiving, when we're not competing, when we're not prejudiced, when we're not living in fear and hostility that creates separation. That's who we innately are. Are you with me still? So then, if your energy becomes coherent, and the person next to you's energy is coherent, and those two energy fields come together, and they start interacting, and they start interfering, they're going to create a bigger amplitude, a bigger wave. Yes or no? And the bigger the amplitude, the higher the energy. Yes or no? And then the higher the energy, then the more energy we should see in the room. Yes or no? And we've measured the energy in the room, and it always goes up in our events because the divine is present. And the person then becomes more energy than matter, more wave than particle. And now, we used to see, years ago, small changes in our events. You know, people having here and there some wonderful experiences. And now, it's happening in shorter and shorter amounts of time. And the higher the energy, the faster the frequency, the more connected they are to the unified field, the shorter amount of time it takes for it to occur. Are you with me still? And I can tell you without a doubt, I've looked at over 8,000 brain scans. I can tell you that when you analyze your life within some disturbing emotion that's created by the hormones of stress, you are going to make your brain worse. Because those emotions are the past, and you're thinking in the past. And if you're aroused by those stress hormones, you're going to drive it further and further into high beta. We've seen it over and over again. I can tell you without a doubt that your brain doesn't change your brain. I can tell you that the program doesn't change the program. The ego doesn't change the ego. The personality takes a long time to change the personality. It's only when you become pure consciousness. That's the moment you have an effect on matter. Are you with me still? And imagine then, we've seen this now, when a person truly connects to that unified field, and we can predict now almost when it's going to happen, if their brain is being measured. Would you agree then you should see higher energy in the brain? Yes or no? Yes. So then when a person, listen to this, is connecting to that unified field where all possibilities exist and they no longer feel separate from their dreams, they feel connected to their dreams, all they have to do is put their attention and their awareness on what already exists. Yes or no? Come on, that bounced off some of you. Poke the person next to you, please. So if you're in a field where all possibilities exist and you feel connected to everyone, everything, everywhere, every place, every time, then you don't have to try to create anything. All you have to do is pick it. Yes or no? Put your observation on it. Experience it. Become aware of it. So then imagine students, and I've labored for 3 years, almost 4 years, to have our students be able to sit in a meditation for an extended period of time and get beyond their bodies. And now our students, our advanced students, they can sit for as long as they want to sit. They know how to do it. They can change their brain waves in 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 9 seconds, 12 seconds. It's not like, hey, I'm getting to the quantum field before you. It's not like that. It's more like a skill, yes or no? And imagine we had all these wonderful, wonderful elders in our event in Tampa just a few months ago. And you can't tell me that you're too old to do this, because I saw them connect. And one lady in her late 70s said, I lost my spiritual virginity today. She connected. So imagine then, when the person truly connects to that field and they begin to tap into a greater frequency, it should be measurable in their brain, yes or no? And imagine we're capturing amplitudes of energy that have never been recorded in the history of neuroscience. And we can say, when that occurs, she can't make her brain do that. It's happening to her. And while that's going on, we're doing all this amazing research. The brain is in deep, deep, deep delta. That person, their body is sound asleep and their mind is turned way on. They are way in that autonomic nervous system. And when that occurs, they all of a sudden connect to a greater frequency. And all of a sudden we see these amplitudes of energy. It looks like a snowstorm on the EEG, in the brain scan. And I know that person is having a full-on sensory experience without their senses. They are having an inward experience that's greater than their trauma, their betrayal, their shock, their diagnosis, their fear. Whatever's happening between their ears is more real than anything that's happened in their external environment. Now think about this. If you're having a full-on sensory experience without your senses, what would happen right now if your senses were amplified by 30%? What if everything you were seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, feeling, what if your senses were amplified by 25% right now? Would your awareness of reality be amplified by 25 or 30%? Yes or no? And if your awareness is amplified, then your consciousness is amplified. Yes or no? And you can't have consciousness without energy. They're married. So the energy of the brain goes up. And then the next thing you know, The inward experience rewires the brain in an instant, and it sends a new emotional signal, but it's not emotional. Emotions like fear and guilt and shame, they're slow energy. It's an elevated energy. It's not emotional, it's energetic. They're getting an electrical charge in their body. And they'll say, I was baptized in light. Light filled my entire body. And that is the moment they're getting a new emotional signal to the body. And the receptor sites on the outside of the cells are 100 times more sensitive to frequency and to energy than they are to chemistry. And in 1 second, that person is transformed. And that's what's happening now in our work. Are you with me still? So, I don't really want to argue quantum superimposition any longer. I don't want to talk about theory any longer, because my heroes, the people that I want to be with, are people just like you. That I don't care about keynote lectures or conferences. I'm bored with them. I've outgrew them. I want to be with doers. Imagine, we were in Italy just a few months ago, running an advanced workshop. I have a whole new team of neuroscientists that we're working with. And I was trying to get to these guys. They're physicians and researchers, and I'm trying to get to them to show them some of the crazy stuff, to prepare them. Like, get ready, this is going to get wild. And they're busy doing all their brain mapping and get everything organized, and we're going to meet for lunch, and I get to lunch early, and then I have to go, and then I'm leaving, and they're coming in. In 3 days, we're doing this. I'm going to get to you guys, I'm going to get to you guys. And then after like 3 days, I'm like, nothing like an experience to cause a long-term memory. And I thought, the hell with it. Let them just have the experience, you know. So, second day, Friday afternoon, I'm introducing a new meditation. And we have a room of 600 plus people, and I'm on the stage and I'm leading the meditation, and all of a sudden I see all this commotion going in the back there. And they're screaming and yelling, and my staff comes up, you better get back there, you know. So I go out the back here, and I go along the hallway, and I come in the back, and this is what they're saying, okay? There's a woman sitting in the middle of this meditation, and she's lit up. And when I mean lit up, she's having an experience. And the brain scientists are watching the screen and just saying, she's having a massive seizure. Now, they've never seen anything like this before. Here's the humor in the situation. The woman who's sitting in the meditation is a physician from London. Are you with me? And she is connecting to the unified field, and she's getting an upgrade. And she is on the fringe of this incredible, loving intelligence, this intelligent love, and it begins to consume her, because that's what the quantum field is. It's intelligent love. And she made up her mind. This is what she said before she started that discipline. She said, I have to prove to myself that this is possible, so I'm going to do it for everybody in this room. I'm not going to do it for me. I'm going to do it for everybody in this room. I got to get beyond my analytical mind because I have very, very rigid training. You with me? So here she goes. She gives it everything she has. She surrenders. She trusts in the unknown. She becomes nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. And then I say, you're in that infinite field of information. Just because you can't see something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Put your awareness on that field. Pay attention to it. Surrender to it. Feel it. Experience it moment after moment and become more aware of it. So then if you put your awareness on your nose, it exists, yes? Yes. But if you don't have your awareness on it, it doesn't exist. Yes or no? Yes. Come on. Yes. So then if you don't have any awareness on the quantum field, it doesn't exist for you. Yes or no? Yes. Until you put your awareness on it. So I'm asking them to unfold deeper into the unified field and experience it. Put your awareness on it moment after moment, and certain people start to connect to that energy, that coherent energy. And all of a sudden, in 1 second, her entire brain goes into gamma. Not just regular gamma, which is superconsciousness. We're talking about lots of high energy gamma. It looks like, crazy stuff in the scientists are yelling back there, and I come back and they're going, she's having a seizure, she's having a seizure. I go like this, shh, 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 shh. Put my hand on her, I go, quiet. And she's back there listening to them say, she's having a seizure. Now, she's a physician, and she's saying, oh, this is not a seizure. She's not saying that. She has to decide, do I listen to that or do I keep going? And she just said, I'm going. And so she surrenders into this experience, and she's sustaining this high level of gamma, coherent gamma, super consciousness. All of her awareness is on her inner world. In other words, she is aroused. Her sympathetic nervous system has switched on, and instead of switching on like being chased by a predator, instead of that energy being drawn from the field, the sympathetic nervous system is switching on, and it's taking all that energy stored in the body and it's driving it up to the brain. And when it goes on, all of a sudden the brain goes into gamma, and she's aroused from the inner experience. Are you with me? But it's not from a predator or from a danger. It's from the divine. And now she is in gamma. So I say to the scientist, shut up, let her have the experience, don't bother her, and get back here with that brain scan afterwards. So we have the break, they come back there, and they're all sweating, and they're freaked out, and, oh my God, yeah. So they show me this sustained gamma. And then, my whole theory about the mystical is that energy has to reach the pineal gland. When the pineal gland gets activated, melatonin all of a sudden starts to produce derivatives, metabolites, that create the mystical experience. Chemicals that create a phospholuminescent energy in the brain, create hallucinations or vivid imagery, suppress the drives of the body, create antioxidants for healing, release chemicals like Valium that sedate the analytical mind. And the person's going to go mystical. They're going to go dimensional. And she went dimensional. And when we put up the three-dimensional imagery, the hologram of the brain, the entire pineal gland was on fire. It was on fire. I knew in that moment that what we were doing was correct. So we had the scientists come up on the stage. There's nothing like a good story. We bring the doctor up there. We show the brain scans. The scientists are like little kids, goofy and laughing. Ooh, I can't believe it. This is crazy stuff. It's not a seizure. I spend hours with these people every week and go to meetings, and they're yelling at each other. This can't be. It can be. Well, it's not normal. I know it's not normal. You got to think out of the box. So she tells the story of how the divine connected to her and said, hey, in imagery and profound information, I've always been with you. Welcome. And she was laughing and crying at the same time. And now this is not like a dream or visualizing. You understand this is a download. Yes? And with that information comes energy, because you can't separate the two. She's getting a very profound message. She's on the stage sobbing, telling the story. And then the event ends in Italy. And we all fly back to Seattle. And when I land in Seattle, one of the researchers is a physician. She's a brilliant lady. And she sends me a picture of this woman who's the physician from London. And she had eczema from the time she was 3 months old. Now, she's a doctor now, right? She did the diet, she did the cortisol, she did all the creams, she did all the things, took all the Benadryls, and of course, all of that was matter trying to change matter. Yes or no? Yes. And so she got a little improvement, and kept it at bay. So they send me the picture of her arm with eczema covered all over her arm, and then two hands like this, and eczema all over her hands. Monday morning, they send me the next picture of her arm, and there's no eczema on her arms anywhere. None. And no eczema except a little bit on the outside of her hand. So then, if you connect to that unified field of oneness and wholeness, then wholeness and oneness should be reflected in your biology, yes or no? Yes. And would you agree the more you surrender and get out of the way and get beyond your body and your face and your skin color and your culture and your problems and your past and your future, and you trust in that unknown, the deeper you go into it, the faster the frequency, the shorter amount of time it should take to produce effects in your life. Yes or no? And people who do this work always say the same thing. It came out of nowhere. And I always say to them, that's because you created it in nowhere. Something appeared out of nothing. That's because you created it from nothing. It happened in no time. I know. You created it in no time. Yes or no? So then, the divine in you, in closing, has always been present with you. Yes or no? Yes. It's an omnipresent intelligence that's loving you into life. Yes? And so there's your outer environment, and if you want to hide the divine anywhere really well in a human being, you put it within them, because they'll look everywhere else for it. Yes? So it's a presence, yes or no? Yes. And it's standing here and it's waiting. And you know when someone's present in your life with you because they're paying attention to you, yes or no? Yes. And you know when they're not present with you because they're not paying attention to you, yes or no? So imagine this presence that's waiting for you to do your meditation, and you go like this, you're doing your meditation like that. God, I gotta meditate today. And it's going like, are you kidding me? Oh my God, I don't know if I can do. That's what you're bringing to it. And then while it's standing there waiting, you're thinking, I got to take care of that person. I got to check that email. I got to do this thing. And all your attention is on your outer world, and it's going, hello, I'm over here. And then would you agree that the moment you become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time, you're taking your attention off somebody, someone, something, someplace, sometime, and you're becoming nobody? Now you're looking at it, yes or no? Yes. And you walk through that eye of the needle. Once you get through it, then there's more. And if you can unfold deeper into the unified field, and as you move closer towards it, would you agree then you'll experience greater degrees of wholeness and oneness and less separation? That means you won't have to try to create your dreams. All you have to do is become aware that they already exist and experience them. Yes or no? So then the closer you get to it, the shorter amount of time it should appear in your life. Are you with me still? Come on. And what if you were to connect with it? Truly connect with it. Would you agree then you will become more willful? Because it has an amazing will. Come on. Yeah. You become more loving. It's a loving intelligence. Yes or no? You become more giving. It's a giver of life. Yes or no? You become more forgiving. It's forgiven you millions of times. Yes or no? You become more conscious. It's a consciousness. Yes or no? You become more mindful. It has an infinite mind. Its nature will become your nature. Its mind will become your mind. And people then in your life will say, something's up with him. He must have changed his medication today. Because as Dawson said, your nervous system is the greatest pharmacist in the world. And that common people just like you are doing the uncommon. And this day-to-day is to inspire you to begin to practice it in your life and to draw with a community of people that are actually doing it. And that they carve out a little time out of their busy day to present themselves to the world as a greater ideal. And if you can sustain and maintain a modified state of mind and body your entire day and keep your energy up, get ready, because something unusual is going to happen in your life. It's the law. And I know it from experience, and I've witnessed it too many times. And it will come in a way that you least expect. Why? Because if you can expect it, it's nothing new. If you can predict it, it's more of the same. It's got to be a surprise. It's got to rock your world. It's got to catch you off guard, and it has to leave no doubt that what you did inside of you produced some effect outside of you. And when you can correlate the changes you made inside of you with the effect you produced outside of you, you're going to pay attention to what you did, and you're going to do it again. And that's when we go from being a victim to being a...
Survival has been very adaptive.
Yeah.
Like, because if you're being chased by T-Rex, you don't run up to T-Rex and say, oh, cute little dinosaur, let me pet you. That's not adaptive. Mm-hmm. The fear is adaptive. You run from the unknown. Yes. You run from challenges, right?
Yes.
So if you're living in survival, there's better chances of surviving if you run from the unknown. And by the way, when you're living in survival, the infinite potentials in the quantum field, you'll select the worst case scenario in your mind. And you'll begin to emotionally prepare yourself for the worst case scenario, because you have better chances of surviving.
There you go.
If you prepare for the worst, right?
There you
so
go.
People spend their whole life thinking about the worst thing and emotionally embracing it. Well, you take a thought and an emotion, or an image and an emotion, you're branding or conditioning your body into what? Anxiety, into fear. So then you keep doing that over and over again, the body becomes the mind of fear. And whether you think you can control it or not, you're going to have a panic attack. And the panic attack is the body saying, you've conditioned me this way. Try as you may with your conscious mind to control it. You programmed it subconsciously. Then you start worrying about the next panic attack, and it's that very anticipation that keeps the person on the hamster wheel.
And robs them of all of this energy as well.
They're absolutely. So they don't believe in possibility when they're living in that state, because in survival, it's not a time to create. All the blood flow is going to the hindbrain and away from the forebrain. There's no physiology really for a person to begin to create a new future. So think about it. So then 70% of the time, people in the world are living anticipating the next moment based on their past moment. And so they're laying reality down moment by moment with the next known, the next predictable moment. And so the hormones of stress endorse the senses. Our senses become heightened when we're under stress, and we become materialists. We narrow our focus on the danger. So then you're focusing on matter. You're focusing on the material world. And when you do that, you put all your attention, the arousal of the stress hormones puts all your attention on your body. If you're being chased by T-Rex, you better be paying attention to your body. When people start reaching this moment, my goodness, they're overcoming themselves. And now they're at that perfect place to create. And my definition of creation is when I forget about myself. That's when you're free. So some people can do it because they've practiced it. Other people can't get beyond the addiction of a certain emotion. That means their body is still their mind. So then if you're sitting in a meditation and your body's throwing the kitchen sink at you and saying, Ed, you're a loser, you're never going to change, this is too hard, why don't you quit? And you're aware that that's your body doing that, and you say to your body, we're going to sit here and we're going to sit in this fire, and I'm going to keep applying the formula, and your brain starts running to all the emails you have to do, and you become aware of that, and you return back to the present moment, and you tell the body it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind. Now your will is getting greater than that program, and there's a liberation of energy. And every time you do that, that's a victory. And you teach people.
Every time you do that, that's a victory. When your mind tells the body, I'm in charge.
When you say to when you want to get up and you want to quit, and you go, oh, no, that's my body, bring it back. And now you're taming the animal. The body is the animal, and you're like a dog. You sit, and if you keep doing this, you're climbing on top, and the body finally acquiesces. It finally says, "I'm not going anywhere," and then boom, there's this liberation of energy. What's the side effect? Joy. Person's heart just automatically opens up, and every time they do that, those victories add up. There's no such thing as a bad meditation. There's only overcoming yourself. And when you sit in the fire and you work with that, people say to me, why do you meditate every morning? I say, because if I can overcome myself in the morning, the rest of my day is easy. It's easy. Not true? Because that's what it's about. You master yourself, you master your life. And so then all the chatter in your head that you listen to all day long, that is called the default mode network in the brain. Our research shows that shuts off. Not just shuts off during the meditation, it stays shut off for the rest of the day. So the critic in your head that's telling you this will never happen, you don't have enough time, there's no voice there. So you just have a clear flow on where you're going, and you trust yourself more. So then when you start practicing creating that brain and heart coherence, you can believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that it's actually, there's physical evidence in your brain to look like it's already happened. And you can begin to understand, you can select a new potential in the quantum field, and every day emotionally embrace that future reality to such a degree that your body begins to believe it's living in that future reality in the present moment. And you're signaling new genes and new ways to change your body to look like it's already happened. Now think about this. If there's physical evidence by thought alone in your brain and body to look like your wealth or your future has already happened, it's already happened. And you're already it. So it's not about your wealth. It's not about your health. It's not about your freedom. It's who you become. So then as you overcome, you become someone else. And so most people don't understand that that the truth is that every time you overcome yourself a little bit more, the side effect is that you love yourself a little bit more. And so now self-love is no longer about pleasure or having a car. It's something that you're cultivating within you. So then imagine, we have research to show, and this is such a duality, that when you start seeing the brain start synchronizing, getting coherent. The front of the brain and the back of the brain, the two hemispheres coming together, and we can say to scientists that come and study our work, oh, watch this, Ed's gonna pop. What do you mean? Just watch, this is gonna be good. And all of a sudden you see this brain going into this kind of psychic union, the heart blows wide open, you see coherence going on, and you'll look around at that person, and there's tears running down their face. Imagine feeling so whole that it's impossible to want. I mean, how can you want when you're whole? Because you feel like you already have it. Now, when you reach that point, that's when the magic happens, because now you are worthy to receive. And the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving.
Share this with them, please.
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm curious and I'm a pragmatist. If you tell me something, all I want to know is how I'm going to use it in my life. And I'm not into dinner conversation because nobody changes from that. I'm a doer and I want to be around doers. And
this is why you and I connect so well, I think.
And obviously, you get a group of people that are passionate about transformation, and they've done some of the work. When we were doing our 4.5 day advanced workshops, right around the end of the event, I was seeing people starting to seeing some really great transformations, and I thought,
this is the pop.
Yeah, it's a pop. Big pops, and we were like, we had to send them home, and I was like, oh God, man, if I could just have them for a week. So we created these week-long events where people retreat from their lives, and they remove the constant stimulation in their external environment that reminds them of who they think they are as a personality. They separate themselves from the people they know and the places they go and the things that they do at a certain amount of time in their routine, mundane life. So we'll bridge a little quantum physics with a little neuroscience, a little endocrinology, a little epigenetics, psychoneuroimmunology. Those are all sciences about possibility. And I now know that if you can give people sound scientific information, and, for me, that's the language.
I know.
And then if they can turn to the person next to them and explain it, you're not going to get off the hook. If you can't explain it, it's not wired in your brain. But if you can build a model and explain it, you're installing the neurological hardware in your brain in preparation for the experience. So the more you understand what you're doing and why, the how gets easier because you can assign meaning to it. So then if I can set up the conditions and the environment and give them the proper instructions and push the envelope a little bit. And people who get their behaviors to match their intentions and their actions equal to their thoughts, they get their mind and body working together, they're going to have a new experience. And the experience then is not only going to enrich the philosophical circuits in their brain, because experience does that, but it's going to produce an emotion. So they're going to start feeling more unlimited. They're going to start feeling more free. Now they're teaching their body chemically to understand what their mind is intellectually understood. So if you've done it once, you should be able to do it again.
You have the recipe, you have the formula.
So if you can repeat it, you will neurochemically condition your mind and body to begin to work as one. In other words, the body will start to learn how to do it as well as the mind, and you won't have to consciously think about it any longer. So it gets easier, right? So we follow that format, and the first couple days is that getting beyond your life, getting beyond your emotions. Everybody's got to do it, but if you just keep applying the formula, keep going, and I keep reminding you and keep building the model, I give them numerous opportunities to connect. And numerous opportunities to overcome themselves. Sooner or later, you're just going to figure it out. It doesn't matter. You're just going to figure it out. And when you do, then we start seeing now these incredible transformations and changes. And it's like a 4-minute mile. Because I really think now, Ed, that evidence is the loudest voice. It is the loudest voice. And so we've got all the brain scans, we've got all the heart rate measurements, we got great measurements on immune regulation, how you can strengthen your immune system by thought alone. We have great measurements on that you could actually change your genes in 4 days, lengthen your telomeres, lengthen your life within 60 days, change your neurotransmitters, change the energy around your body, the energy centers of your body, and change all this stuff. And so that's the scientific evidence, but the evidence of people now is really the laboratory. So then what's the side effect of a person then who begins to make significant changes in just mastering that formula? Well, the side effect is a remission from a health condition. So we have seen not once, not twice, more than twice, blind people. Like that one lady had a stroke on the optic nerve, a nurse from London, very smart lady, and the lesion was on the optic nerve, and it created a blind spot in her visual field from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So she can't see anything there, and so she lost her license. She has her own company. She couldn't read emails, and sooner or later your brain accommodates a little bit, but not fully. And so the typical prognosis with a stroke when there's neurological damage is that if your brain doesn't recover within 2 weeks, it's going to stay. It's going to stay the same and slowly get worse. So she has great relationships with all the physicians, and they all said, yeah, you're going to have to learn to live with it. And believe it or not, one doctor said, hey, why don't you try going to this event? And this nurses are practical people. I mean, they're super practical people. And you want to get a good doctor, ask a nurse, right? Sure. And they're just very, very practical. So she did the online course, she did both the courses, she read all the books, she did all the meditations, and she came to the event with the intention of learning how to live with her condition. It didn't occur to her fully that she could heal it. And she went because she wanted to start a nonprofit to help people. Wow. So she went with a doctor that recommended the work. And just a certain point in the middle of the event, she was doing a walking meditation on the beach with 1,000 other people there. And it occurred to her that maybe she should think about healing her eyes, So she went into the meditation in the same day. And she laid down after we finished the meditation, and she said it was like someone taking cellophane, crackling it in her head. She felt something going on inside her brain, and she was crying because she knew something spectacular was happening. And she didn't want to open her eyes, and then the meditation ended, and she said, when I opened my eyes, it was like I was seeing so much brighter. Wow. And she said, I could see no blind spot, and the doctor was laying right next to her, and she was sobbing, they were hugging each other. And so she went on the Monday morning to get her eyes, the visual fields measured. And hopefully we'll get the image for you, but you can see on the pre-measurement just a black, that quarter of the sphere, the lesion of the circle was just all black. In other words, blindness. You see the post-measurement on the Monday morning after the event, there isn't a black spot. Unbelievable. Complete restoration of sight. Now, if you ask me if that was possible, 2 years ago, I would say, yeah, it's possible theoretically. But now, this is the 4-minute mile. Then we have another lady that was blind from birth, 5% vision, and again, she had an amazing experience with our coherence healing. We teach people how to heal. When she opened her eyes, she could see faces for the first time. Unbelievable. And in fact, they had these 2 big bouquets on the stage, really big, beautiful flowers. And she had 5% vision, so she could just see a little bit of light. And she thought they were 2 bodyguards on the stage guarding me the whole event. And when she sat up, she could see flowers. Or you see the nurse tell her story, or the lady who's allergic to everything at the same event, who's wearing a mask with the filters and the whole bit, that had anaphylactic shock every day of her life. By the second day, she's on the floor with her mask off, dancing around. That person sits down after they witness that. When they close their eyes and they do their next meditation, their acceptance, their belief, and their ability to surrender and trust that it could happen to them becomes greater. What I want our community to do is say, what is standing in the way between me and my ability to connect to that field? Because I want to eliminate every belief, every emotion, every past, whatever. I want to remove all of those veils. Why am I doing this? Because I want to get so good at this. We have some MIT researchers that are going to organize all the data. 50%. I want to get to 50%, and then we are going to walk into children's hospitals and we're going to say, what kids, just give us your kids. We won't touch them, we don't want any money, all we want to do is help. And I think that's amazing. That's a living organism called the human beings, the living organism, the human being. The age of selfish individuality has to end right now. The living organism
has to take care of one another. They have to heal one another. They have to teach one another. They have to exchange important information amongst one another. They have to shine for one another, not to be outstanding and competitive, but to show others that they can shine. That's the only way we're going to make our way out of this mess.
Oh my gosh. My favorite things that I've ever had said here, just so you know. Because the application of this is beyond just someone going from 5% vision to 95% vision. The application of this in humanity and consciousness, as you've just described there at the end, is what really I'm hearing and seeing all of that. That's what fascinates me. And I must say to you that, we all agree that certainly our thoughts can make us unhealthy. So if that is true, there's got to be a way that the mind and the heart can be able to heal the body as well. And I'm fascinated by the study of epigenetics, and what you've just covered here it's a whole new level. I love what you said. We've poked a hole. It's the 4-minute mile. But the reason it's the 4-minute mile is because once the 4-minute mile was broken, 2 weeks later, everybody was breaking it because it was a new belief, it's a new level of consciousness. Yep. So the evidence of all these amazing healings, and not only just healings, people are creating new jobs, new opportunities, new relationships, new mystical experiences that transcend language, where you just can't be Ed anymore. You know too much after that. That's the unknown, right? So in order for you to really begin to explore the unknown aspect of yourself, you got to learn how to get beyond the known aspect of yourself. And if you keep coming back to the known, you're going to miss out on the unknown. So you would say, well, I don't know anything in the unknown. Of course, it's the unknown. And if you try to control it there, you're back to the known. If you try to predict it, you're back to the known. So you got to go through this trial and error of just kind of refining your attention, refining your ability. And it's just got to be something like playing tennis or playing golf or doing martial arts or working out or crocheting or dancing the salsa. You just got to keep going, man. In the beginning, it's tedious. And then when you start finding your groove, like our community, they don't miss their morning meditations. You know why? Because the magic is happening, and they know if they miss it, they're gonna cut off from the magic. So they, whether they're tired, whether they're hungover, whether they're in. And if you wake up in the morning and you can't get your butt out of bed, you know what that means? It just means you can predict the feeling of everything that's going to happen in your life. And the body's resigned. So then, when you went on a school trip when you were a kid, you woke up before your parents because you knew something new was going to happen. That's the body going, wake up. It's something unexpected is going to happen. What happened to us, right? Christmas Day.
So why not, put in your time and then measure the effects of you at cause. I mean, become the scientist in your life and really start to experiment with it. Okay, let me change my energy. Let me just write down 4 thoughts that, like, it's too hard, I'll start tomorrow, this doesn't feel right, whatever it is. It's this person's fault. Just write those down and say, these thoughts, like Gandalf on the bridge. You may not pass today. This is the end. So then if you become conscious of those thoughts, now you're the governor of your thoughts. What actions, what behaviors do you want to change? Do you complain? Do you blame? Do you judge? Do you make excuses? How do you talk? Do you speak limited? Just pick 4 things that you're not going to do any longer. What emotions get you in trouble? What are the emotions
that you're addicted to too, right?
That you're addicted to that keep you returning back to your past. And if you don't know, close your eyes for about 30 minutes and just watch where your mind goes and watch your feelings and just say, okay, it's frustration, it's unworthiness, it's self-doubt, it's guilt, it's frustration, it's shame. Just become conscious of those and just review them in your mind so that you don't go unconscious them in your waking day.
It's so powerful because, by the way, everyone that's listening to this is so awesome, because if you've been listening to my content for the last 3 or 4 months, we've been laying this foundation, and now I just bring you this master that takes it to a master class level and explains to you the scientific reasons that these things work. But I want to jump back in with you here on something, because I just want to do a couple basic application things for everyone here. These emotions that our body gets addicted to. There's a power, everyone, because I've experienced this in my own life. Everything that Joe's explaining here, other than healing my own body, I've watched them happen in my life from the standpoint of becoming something, and then these things are in my life rather than me sort of forcing them to happen. I mean, most people that have had any great things happen in life can define at least moments of their life where this is just a known truth. Dr. Joe talks so eloquently about the fact that, about this epigenetics concept is fascinating me, but at the same time, you talk eloquently about only about 1% of us are predisposed to most of these negative ailments in our lives in the first place anyways. This is a misnomer. But I want to talk about meditation for a second, because there's people listening to this that have never done it before. So I just want them to start at because the thing that you say that it just is a base level thing, by writing these emotions down, you either don't want to experience or do, or the thoughts that do or don't serve you. The power in just that, everybody. Okay, I want to go back to what Joe said earlier. I just want to give you my 2 cents on this. Is you become aware of them when they reveal themselves to you. Just the awareness gives you a power over them you didn't have before. And remember what Dr. Joe said before, every time you sort of make progress on something like this, you are remaking yourself. So give yourself credit for these small wins. But the cool thing about meditation for me is it strips me of the distractions.
Exactly.
It strips me of what I see, of the kinesthetic, of the auditory. Can you talk about just that basic concept for a second?
Again, I mean, this is brilliant. This is because you're a practical guy, and so am I. So, all right, so if the word meditation means become familiar with, right?
Yes.
Then, people say, oh, well, you shouldn't focus on the negative. Well, really? That's 95% of who you are. And you got to begin to dismantle or denature that old personality. And that means you're going to have to come up against the cravings that the body has emotionally. Like it's 8 o'clock in the morning and you're doing your meditation, you're normally in traffic and you want to get angry and your body's going, hey, you're off schedule. So let me just find something that's mapped in the brain that I'll bring up a past experience why you can feel a little anger. Well, now, once you become aware of that, now the game is on, right? Yes. Because now you're working to become conscious of that and not go unconscious again. And it takes an incredible amount of awareness. Yes. It takes a great amount of consciousness, and you can't have consciousness without energy. So you got to raise your energy in order to get to it. Otherwise, you're going to be consumed. Yes. You're going to return back, right? So if you start becoming familiar, so conscious of those unconscious thoughts, they would never slip by your mind unchecked by you. Now, that is when you really catch yourself, right? And the research shows that you can get better at this. You could actually sense the thought before it comes. So then you start firing and wiring new thoughts. You start thinking to yourself, who am I going to be when I open my eyes? Well, how am I going to make a difference in the world today? Who am I going to be? How am I going to love? How am I going to give? How am I going to serve? How am I going to contribute? What things do I want to really do today? And in the act of closing your eyes and just thinking about and rehearsing what you're going to do, your brain doesn't know the difference. And if you get caught up in it, you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. Now the brain's no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. You are priming your brain, and if you keep doing it, the hardware will become a software program. You know what that means? You just might start acting like a happy person. Well, there's no surprise there. You installed the circuits. Stress hormones arouse the body, so you have your attention on your body. Stress hormones alert the brain, so you're aware of everything in your environment, like an octopus with tentacles in all different directions. You got to control and predict everything in your life. And if you're living by the hormones of stress, you're always investing your attention and energy into the known future based on the past. So you're on a line of time here, in a timeline. So then let's think about it. How are you going to make thought more real than anything else? How are you going to create from thought? Well, let's close our eyes. Let's disconnect from the environment. Less sensory information coming into the brain, less distraction, as you said. Let's play some soft music in the background. Let's stick some earplugs in our ear, whatever you want to do. Diminish sensory, but now you're sitting down. You're not eating. You're not tasting. You're not smelling. You're not feeling. So there's less sensory input coming to your body. So then now your brain waves begin to change. They start slowing down, and you move from this beta brainwave pattern where you're aware that you have a body in space and time, or your attention is on the outer world, or your senses